So today I'm going to start by introducing the members of the Police Accountability Board to you. Okay. So with our Police Accountability Board seat number 1, we have Danielle Tucker. Danielle, can you raise your hand, please? And for me, I am Shawnee Wilson. I am the chair of the Police Accountability Board, and I occupy seat 3. Dr. Celia McIntosh, who is the vice chair, who is occupying PABA seat 4. Can you raise your hand, please? Okay. And then representing the City Council nomination, we have Ida Perez. Representing a City Council nomination Northwest, we have Rabbi Drora Settle. And representing City Council nomination South, we have Reverend Matthew Nikoloff. Okay, so just wanted to give a quick update on some things that are going on right now. So the appeal. So the appeal is going to be, they are still in starting their process. So we expect that they actually will start arguing probably this month or next month. And we did have a meeting with the attorney that is on the case, and we met with them, I think, last month. We were not told much more than we were able to ask questions of how the process was going. Oh my goodness, there's a bee. And then they were, I mean, he was very friendly and was able to answer questions. So we know that they will start arguing at the appeals court downtown probably this month or next month. So that's the update we have for you there. So now I'm going to go ahead, and we wrote an open letter yesterday that was submitted to City Council, President Loretta J. Scott, Vice President Willie Lightfoot, and the rest of council members, to Mayor Lovely Warren, to the police chief, or former police chief Singletary, the county executive Adam Bello, and Honorable Bill Johnson, and Arlene Santiago, and Dr. Muhammad Shafiq. The death of Daniel Prude has amplified the urgency of the discussion of our community's police accountability. During this time, we have heard the mayor reference the need for independent investigation, acknowledge a desire for reform, and refer to the work of RACE in reviewing policing policy. The RACE website announces a working group on policing whose primary task will be to meet Governor Cuomo's mandate to review policing policies and to consider community proposals to completely restructure the ways that police agencies perform their public safety and policing functions. Meanwhile, the City Council is discussing subpoena power for an independent investigation. While we welcome this intention to address issues of police accountability, we are concerned that nowhere in this discussion has mention been made of the existing organization whose sole purpose is to do exactly those things for the City of Rochester, the Police Accountability Board. We are at a loss to understand why the PAB has been excluded from the deliberations. Our board is mandated to, quote, review and assess RPD policies, procedures, patterns, practices, and training, and recommend changes to the RPD, end quote. The PAB was established as a result of legislative action and confirmed by overwhelming voter affirmation. Members of the PAB were appointed through representative and inclusive community-based processes. Our authority comes not through fiat, but through the people. Unfortunately, Justice Ark's decision to disallow final disciplinary authority to the board seems to have led people to think that we no longer have a role. Since our appointments, members of the PAB have been diligently carrying out the task of developing bylaws, reviewing policies and procedures for investigations, and hiring an executive director. None of these essential tasks attract headlines, and it is understandable that members of the general public are unaware of our work. Additionally, there was a great deal of misunderstanding about Justice Ark's ruling. We know that many people thought this action disbanded the PAB altogether, and we have done our best to inform the public that there continues to be a great deal of the board can achieve in our community. As a central task of our remit to make recommendations on the behalf of citizens of Rochester, and as the city's legally appointed civilian oversight policy review body, we recommend the following actions moving forward. Number 1, unequivocal public affirmation from the mayor the police chief and city council of the PAB's role as a legislatively mandated body in matters pertaining to police accountability and the demonstrated need for civilian disciplinary power. PAB presence on any and all municipal county-wide advisory boards regarding police reform and oversight, including race, and whatever other groups may be consulting with the city on these issues. PAB presence in conversations between the mayor, chief, and others related to reviewing and changing RPD policy and procedure. Timely notification to the PAB chair and the executive director, when hired, of any death or investigation of a death in police custody or as a result of police interaction in order to ensure transparency. Immediate disclosure to the PAB of RPD policies and potential strategies regarding public protests, mental hygiene response, and police budget reform. Ongoing liaison between the mayor, the chief of police, and city council with the PAB chair and executive director when hired on all relevant police matters. We believe the city and its people are safer when accountability is a normalized practice in the course of decision making. Each member of the PAB is fully committed to impartiality in the hearing of individual cases, but we will not remain impartial when it comes to the necessity for civilian oversight of police conduct. The overwhelming majority of Rochesterians agree, and so we call on our officials to publicly uphold the will of the people and utilize it to the fullest unprecedented potential of the PAB in meeting the demands of our times. Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and take some questions.
Where does the executive director stand? Every time you go out of executive session, then you try to watch the meetings and you don't know what's happening. Where are we standing? Where are we standing?
Yep. So just the question was, where do we stand with the executive director? So we actually are in the process of we have reviewed applications. So we had over 150 applications for the position of executive director, and we are now interviewing those candidates. So we are interviewing 10. So we actually hope to have, the hope is that we will have to make an offer by the end of October.
Are they, the 10 people, are they local?
Some of the, we cannot say. Sorry, we cannot say if they're local or not.
May sound obvious, but just given what's going on with the Daniel Prude case, how important is this to have this independent function to provide?
So while we can't comment on the case directly, so we can say that we think, these are examples of, yes, an example of why we need to be here, right? So we talk about oversight and accountability. That is what the people of the city voted for. It is a marvel, it is amazing that 77% of the people of the city turned out to vote for this thing. It is amazing. So we need to honor that accountability and make sure that we are part of this process.
Frustrating to not be a part of it?
I would say, honestly, disheartening. I would go with that word.
What would be the role of the community? Sitting down with the police chief, do you see a role of the PAB as being part of some sort of interviewing process or something that goes along with that collection?
Celia, do you want to answer that? Sure. Well, Celia, answer that one.
We don't know what the current role of the PAB would be with that, but that would be something that I'm sure here would like everyone here on the PAB would like to be a part of, especially with the current situation happening. This is not a new call for this accountability and this transparency, and definitely not a new call in Rochester, in New York. There's been lots of statistics that said that there's been a need for us. So we would like to be a part of those decision-making processes.
How would you try to get yourself there, earlier rather than later?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. So this is why we're here today, really talking to the media with these demands for the police accountability to be at these tables, so we can also be a part of the narrative. So yes, we would need to be a part sooner rather than later, because we want to be proactive, not reactive.
So on the point of the selection of a new police chief, now Deputy Mark Simmons has been appointed as the interim chief, and I don't know if you all had a moment to take a look at the preliminary report that the mayor had put out yesterday. However, in it, there's an email from Mark Simmons to Singletary requesting to deny the FOIA request from the family attorney. I have a copy of that if you haven't seen it, but I just wanted to. I would just want to know if you have any comment on his appointment.
I would say currently we don't have a comment on that.
Where are the other members of the PAB this morning?
So one of the other PAB members is out of town, and then another PAB member declined to come to this meeting today.
Johnny, there's still one seat to fill, correct?
Yes.
How's that going? What's been the application process? And is that person representing other diversity in the community? You know, people with disabilities, differently able people.
Yep. So the Police Accountability Board Alliance is in charge of that vacancy, and there has been discussions to make sure that there is mindfulness of picking a candidate that is going to represent those that are not represented here. Especially, this board was meant to serve the people, and so the people need to be on this, which means everyone, social workers, regular, not regular, but people in the community that are dealing with this every day, right? They also have a voice in this conversation.
Any comment on mental health arrests and how they should be conducted?
I mean, that's a big question, right? That's a big question. So,
Has there been any conversation about it among the PAB?
oh, of course, we've talked about mental health arrests. I mean, we have 2 medical providers here, yes, and we've had to call for mental health arrests in the past. So, yes, there needs to be a countywide, large, sweeping change that has to happen in order to address the lack of mental health in this town, lack of mental health access. So that's where it starts.
Mental health access. What about mental health arrests? Should that be done by the police or should it be done by a different agency?
So, I mean, when we're talking about that, we have to address the policies, because according to the law, that's the way it's currently written. So if we're going to impact change and reform on how mental health arrests are done, then we have to attack the policy and procedure level. So that would be, from a legislative standpoint, talking to your elected officials about that issue. But when we're talking about mental health and mental illness, especially in communities of color, there have to be more providers that are culturally responsive, that look like the population they are serving. So, so this has to be ongoing. So definitely we have to get those providers at the table. We can't keep them out of the narrative either. So thank you.
So when Adam Bellows' news conference, I think it was on Friday, talked about expanding FIT and emergency response team for the county and more mental health. Is there we talked about wanting to get a lot of community groups involved in that plan. Is there a place for the PAB, maybe outside of just police accountability, but just in representing the interests to the other parts of the community? Do you see broadening in a sense and wanting to be part of things like what Bellows putting together, talk about mental health, or do you just have a lane that is only police accountability and not looking to suspend it?
Well, I think that everyone here is other than being on the Police Accountability Board, we all wear different hats, right? Like I am the president of the Rochester Regional Coalition Against Human Trafficking and advocating for change in different ways. I'm also a psych mental health provider, so I'm also in that lane as well. So yes, we all want to be I can't really speak for everybody, but we would all like to do things in our respective lanes for the greater good of the community, including improving healthcare reform and mental health.
Yeah. One thing that's so important about getting our executive director hired as well is that the legislation requires that as kind of like a first big initial step before the rest of the legislation becomes activated, if you will, right? Like, it's not that we're trying to put off these other things. We just have to do first things first to ensure that everything is set up as excellently and as effectively as possible. One of the points of the legislation is that the PAB will conduct public meetings in each of the different areas of the city in order to continue to engage with the public, but also to hear those kinds of concerns. And we do hope that as we continue to, once we've hired our executive director and we can look forward to those kinds of community engagements, we can start to hear more of the voices of the people. And then we can also form advisory committees and set some more agenda that way. It's also important to note that, oh sure. It's also important to note about impartiality. The reason we say we can't answer some of these questions, this is a case that the PAB is designed to potentially hear, right? Should there become a complaint that's saying we think that we want to have another review of this process, we're not happy with the way that this has been handled, right? And so in order to maintain ourselves, we're essentially equivalent to like a jury and a judge at the same time, right? And so the same kinds of, even though we're not either of those things, it's analogous to that, right? And so just like a jury can't be seen having all sorts of public opinions about a case because it projects a certain bias, or a judge can't be out at protests and rallies because they need to maintain that sense, we as a board really need to be careful to make sure that we are listening to all the sides, that we are paying attention, that we're listening, but also that should and when this case might come before us, we're able to hear it in an impartial, unbiased manner, and that all who are participating can feel that the process is working, right? And so that's one of the reasons you might not see PAB members always getting out in public or speaking up about stuff, or even on our social media, because we really do want to make sure that we're able to be present when the time comes to do the job that the people elected or mandated this board to exist for, which is to hear this case and make sure that accountability and transparency happen. So that's one reason why there's less, when we talk about impartiality and trying to avoid bias, and we might say we can't answer that question, it's just like I said, a jury couldn't answer that, right? A judge can't comment on a case that they're actively hearing. This is a case that the PAB could very well hear, and so we need to make sure that we're listening carefully about it. What?
Thank you. Any other questions? And I really want to speak to your point again with this mental health. And there's a narrative that's going around. There's a narrative that's going around that maybe African American providers in this community are not educated and not equipped to take care of African American patients. And the reality of it is we are equipped. We are educated. We need to be at the tables. We can't be left out of the narrative. So there are groups in the community that are going to be standing up for this issue because, like I said, we have to be a part of that narrative because we have the lived experience of what many of Black Americans, Brown Americans go through in this community, or just with mental health, period. So, thank you. Any other questions?
What other questions, folks?
I had one and then you...
Sorry.
No.
I'm a little, we talked after, I'm a little confused about some of that. I didn't think my initial question
No.
was on that. It was more of a just group PAB getting involved.
Yeah, it's not us getting involved.
Yeah.
So,
But I just wanted to, put that out there because, there are things. I'm sorry. There are things that we want to do, like I said, outside of here. But like I said, I just don't. There's that narrative that's happening that I've heard out there, and I just wanted to kind of dispel that. So I just clearing that up, just in case.
I haven't heard that narrative, not to say that it doesn't exist, but I have heard a narrative that there aren't enough African American or Black or Brown providers, that there's been barriers for people to actually get into the field. Is that something that you could speak to?
You can speak to it
Yeah,
as well.
so I'll speak to that as well. So I know that nationally, physician assistant, African American physician assistants are, do not quote me, but I think around 2% of all physician assistants in the United States. And so there is a lack of African American medical providers are killing Black people.
That's true.
Period. And so we need to make sure that we are, just like we are calling on and impressed and humbled by all of the people making room for, Black people in the community and outside of the community. We need to make sure that, we are holding medical providers and medical institutions accountable also to make sure that Black people have access to education, right? that the standards in which they are allowed to go to school are not exorbitant, because that's a part of it too, is that we just can't get them into school because their grades aren't good enough. When there is so much more, like medical schools are now opening up their opportunities because they realize that like grades are not everything, and you have to be able to know that experience also makes you a good clinician, right? So, Shirley.
Much of the conversation seems to center around African American and Black folks and the incidence of police brutality and lack of services to the Black communities. But we are also talking about the Black and Brown community, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any comments to make about how inclusive the efforts are around the PAB's work?
Say that again, please, Shirley. I'm sorry.
Any comments around how inclusive the efforts are of the PAB?
Inclusive as far as making sure that we have Black and Brown folks on the committee, or?
Just the focus of the work, and a lot of the conversation focuses around African American or Black folks.
Sure. Yeah. You want Ida? Yeah. Thank you.
I can speak on that more on the Ibero side. I know that our CEO, Angelica Perez Delgado, has been working really hard with all communities to bring forth, you know, some of the issues that we face as well, because they're not that different. They're not different at all, right? You know, we've also have made a call out to our Latino leaderships to also be present and supporting these efforts. You know, that's another area that we still need to work, and I'm speaking more now as a Latino leader in our community more than the PAB, but there's work that needs to be done there as well in regards to bringing leadership in the Latino community to help support these efforts, because we're not far from that. You know, it's the same community, it's the same people, and so we need to do better when it comes to that in regards to our Latino community. And I know there's a few out there that are working very hard to do that, but we need more representation and more support.
And obviously we understand that race is at the heart of a lot of these issues, but there are other marginalized communities that need to be represented as well. I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, and we certainly, unfortunately, lost a member who was part of the disability rights community, but we hope to expand in that way, that there are many groups in that need to be at the table, and we certainly are very aware of that.
Yes.
One simple practical question. So eventually people will be able to come to the PAB and ask for assistance when they feel there's been a time of abuse or some policy. What can people do now? Can people come to the PAB, or when it's not when?
Right. So until we hire an executive director, they will have to go to the Center for Dispute Settlement, and go through their process. So that process has been standing in Rochester for many years, and so they will have to go through that process until we have our executive director. We can activate that part of our jurisdiction.
And so when there's an executive director, even before the case has been finished, people will be able to at least come to the PAB with concerns.
I'm sorry. So you're
even if the fifth pillar of having disciplinary power.
Yes, that's correct. So yes, so that's correct. There's too many people talking here. Yes, so we can hear and we can investigate, but we cannot discipline at this point. Yes, thank you.
Are you working sort of on the bylaws are being developed on two tracks? If you get the disciplinary power, but if you don't get it, you're having to do sort of two things at once, prepare for two contingencies as you set up bylaws and get things up and running.
So the bylaws are set. So bylaws are done. So as far as we're concerned, we have one track, which is we have disciplinary power that's coming. So that is how we have established our bylaws. Until, you know, we have one focus, which is doing what we set out to do, and that includes discipline. So we have made our bylaws to reflect that. If something happens and we do not receive that, then we will make changes at that time.
The bylaws are posted?
Bylaws should be posted, yeah.
Okay, they're on your PAB site?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions?
Are you expecting any pushback on your request for actions? And if so, what's the plan?
We'll see. and we'll have a plan when it comes. So we plan to probably be back, because we're not, you know, hi, we're here. And now we're going to use our voices and be loud with them. Okay? We're going to be loud with our voices. All right, so I think we're done. Okay, so everyone, thank you so much for coming again. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you to the community that voted for this referendum, that wanted police accountability and change in Rochester. Before all these horrible events happened, we voted for the police accountability boards. We were already focused on police accountability in Rochester. So thank you so much to everyone who came today. Thank you, media. Thank you, Ibero. And we will talk with you soon. Thank you.